You've spent your life feeling unseen. Even when you are in the room, even when you speak, it often feels as though your words dissolve into the air, unheard, unacknowledged. There's a peculiar kind of loneliness that comes from being invisible, and if you are watching this, you might know it all too well. The paradox is simple yet devastating. The very skill that once kept you safe as a child, blending in, silencing yourself, observing without being observed, has become the quiet architect of your adult pain. What once protected you now limits you. What once allowed you to survive now keeps you from truly living. You might not even recognize it in yourself yet. Perhaps you find yourself shrinking in meetings, fading in relationships, or avoiding attention because it feels dangerous even when the danger no longer exists. And yet deep down, there is a longing to exist fully, to be seen for who you are, without fear, without caution. Take a moment and notice it. The internal tension, the shadow of hypervigilance that has been your constant companion. This is the story of the child you once were, the invisible child, and how their unspoken grief continues to shape your present. Calm, authoritative tone, layered metaphors. To understand this, we must first give a name to the invisible child. In psychological terms, this is a child shaped by emotional neglect. They are often parentified, hyper-aware, and endlessly adaptive. Parentification describes a child who, instead of being nurtured, becomes the caretaker of others' emotional states. Imagine carrying a fragile vase that constantly wobbles. One false move, one misstep, and the world around you collapses. This child learns early that their own needs must be hidden, suppressed, or postponed indefinitely. Hypervigilance becomes second nature. The nervous system is finally attuned to emotional danger, scanning for signs of criticism, disapproval, or neglect. Even in adulthood, this pattern persists. A subtle, unconscious radar that never sleeps. The child becomes an expert in self-erasure, anticipating pain before it arrives. Attachment patterns emerge as well. Avoidant attachment, for instance, develops when the child's attempts to seek connection are repeatedly unmet. They learn implicitly that closeness is dangerous. The child folds inward, a survival strategy that later manifests as difficulty in trusting, vulnerability, or emotional intimacy. Finally, consider the emotional neglect schema. A pervasive sense that one's feelings are invalid or invisible. The child internalizes a silent narrative. I am not enough. My emotions do not matter. My presence is optional. This schema reshapes identity, rewires the nervous system, and colors every relationship the individual enters. Think of it as a quietly leaking foundation. You may appear functional, successful, even charming, but beneath the surface, the child who learned to disappear still exists, whispering reminders of invisibility, fear, and the price of adaptation. The cost of invisibility is not just emotional, it is existential. Every moment of self-suppression carries a hidden toll. It's invisible grief, the kind that isn't acknowledged because it never had a witness. The invisible child sacrifices authenticity for survival. Every smile that hides a tear, every nod that silences a desire, every compromise that erases a preference. These are invisible tributes paid to the altar of neglect, and yet these sacrifices are not forgotten by the nervous system or by the soul. They accumulate quietly, shaping a subtle, pervasive anxiety. Seneca once wrote that we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than reality. For the invisible child, the imagination has been their constant companion, anticipating rejection, imagining disapproval, bracing for absence. These patterns of thought are burned into adulthood. The core fear is consistent. Fear of being seen and still being unacknowledged. Fear of needing and still being neglected. Fear of resting and still being alone. This fear complicates ordinary moments. A casual conversation may feel like a performance. An intimate relationship may feel like a battlefield. Even joy can be tinged with unease because to be truly seen is unfamiliar, even dangerous. Rilke captured this tension beautifully. Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once with beauty and courage. The invisible child's dragon is invisibility itself, the unseen, unacknowledged, unvalidated self waiting to be recognized. You might wake up each day with a quiet exhaustion, a sense that the world expects more than you can give. They become adults who, 1. Avoid the spotlight. Even praise feels uncomfortable because attention triggers vulnerability too. Over-adapt in relationships, bending to others' desires often at the expense of their own. 3. Experience chronic self-doubt. Internalized criticism from childhood masquerades as adult judgment. 4. Struggle with boundaries. Saying no feels dangerous even when it is necessary. 5. Suppress emotions. Anger, sadness, or even joy may be muted to maintain safety. 6. Exist in hyper-awareness. Reading social cues constantly, anticipating rejection or disappointment. These behaviors are not flaws, they are survival strategies. Witnessing them without self-judgment is the first step toward freedom. Unlearning invisibility requires gentle, intentional observation of these patterns, recognizing them as echoes of a younger self who simply did what they had to do to survive. In relationships, career, and identity, the invisible child continues to operate silently, but awareness is the pivot point. You begin to notice, I'm choosing, not just reacting. You begin to experiment with being seen, to risk authenticity, to stretch beyond the internalized limitations imposed decades ago. Healing the invisible child is not about erasing the past, it is about acknowledging it. Inner child reparenting allows you to return to that young self and say, I see you. You mattered. You are enough. Shadow work invites you to explore the suppressed parts of your psyche, to bring light to what has been hidden. Nervous system regulation, through breath movement or meditation, retrains the body to tolerate being present without constant alertness. Softening in the life, choosing vulnerability over perpetual survival mode becomes a radical act of liberation. As Jung reminded us, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. You are not defined solely by invisibility, neglect, or fear. You are defined by your courage to witness, to feel, and to exist fully. The goal is not to be fixed, but to become whole, to inhabit your presence without apology, to allow the invisible child to step into the light, to finally answer the silent question that has followed you your whole life. Do I exist? And to feel at last the quiet, resounding truth. Yes, you exist. You have always existed. If this video spoke to you, share it with someone who has felt unseen. Subscribe for more explorations into the hidden patterns of the human psyche, because you are not alone and your journey toward wholeness matters.